Welcome to Tail Learn Code. Here there will be tales about software development, learning from each other, code to build solutions. And now your host, Chad Green.
So today we've got Krol Mathias. Am I saying the last name correctly? Mathias?
Yeah, it goes both ways. When I was in India, the way how my last name was told to me was Mathias.
Mathias? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
because of just the way how they emphasize on the syllables back home in India. But I know that MATH goes as math
right.
in US, so it's very common to hear Mathias. So it's all good.
Well, I'll say Mathias since now I know that's the correct way of pronouncing it. Well, I actually should know that. Actually, one of my employees, his son is named Mathias. Although I don't know if I've ever seen it spelled out. So I don't know if it's spelled the same way or not.
Yeah, it's a little bit of German. There's a blend of German, like Mateos, and then there is a little bit of Portuguese, which is Matthias. So this is more coming from like a Portuguese descent as part of, being part of that part of India, you know. So, yep.
Awesome. Well, so I'm glad you joined me today. This will be a lot of fun. A little bit different than the other speakers. Most speakers are traditional either developers or standard architects, whereas you're an enterprise architect, so you're looking at things a little bit differently than even like I do. Part of my job is architecture, but I'm still I'm not looking at an enterprise level. And of course the interesting part is you work for Papa John's, which so I've actually a long time ago interviewed for Papa John's. Actually, for basically a similar role of what you're in, and so I learned a lot about Papa John's during those interviews. It's actually pretty interesting that all the things that Papa John's does do technology-wise.
It does.
So, and for those who don't know, Louisville's actually kind of an interesting headquarters of pizza, because Papa John's was founded here and is headquartered here. And of course, you have Yum Brands that's here, which includes Pizza Hut. So it's always kind of funny to think of all. Louisville's not known as a pizza town per se.
Yeah, we're known as a Derby city, right? Not a pizza town, because probably the Derby brings in more money than anything else. So.
Well, I think everyone thinks it brings in more money. I think Papa John's brings in quite a bit more than.
I know. I'm not going to say that right now.
Well, especially this year, because who knows what's going to happen with the Derby.
Correct.
I saw just as yesterday they're not sure if they're going to have audience at the Derby or not. Because I guess the Indy 500 has been delayed till August, and they have decided to have no spectators.
No show, no tickets. Yeah, no spectators.
So now I know I was reading something yesterday that the Derby is now trying to figure out what they're going to do since they're only a couple weeks afterwards.
They have sold some tickets. They went ahead and basically lowered the price of the tickets. They did sell some tickets. Then they are aware of the COVID situation. They have actually kept a hold now on selling tickets because more people are interested to come to the event. But it's more local folks. So it isn't like they're bringing a lot of other business, like, people would stay at hotels and, the dining. They're pretty much coming from home. They're going to watch the Derby. They're going to spend a little bit of money. They're going to get out. So it's not going to be that same kind of flow of economy or dollars like typical other derbies, right?
But it's funny you talk about the local crowd. Back when I was a traveling consultant, I was actually flying back home on what we know as Oaks Day, right? So the day before Derby, and
which it's a day which you don't travel, basically.
Well, I didn't have much choice. Like I said, Gospers didn't care about the Derby, right? It was like we need you in town, right? So sure enough, I'm coming home, and I'm like the only local on the plane, right? It was just one of the smaller jets, but everyone else, everyone's got the Derby hats, because they're coming in for the Derby.
Yep.
And actually, so the other crazy thing about Derby, all these people fly in. The airport is just full of private jets. Literally, they line them up and down the runways and everything. There's so many private jets here, and people were making comments of that. Oh yeah, it's everyone flying in for the Derby. And then, person sitting next to me, she was like, "Oh, so you're going to go to the Derby?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I won't be there." And she's, and the funny part was, she was like, "Well, I guess it's not that important to the locals." Of course, what was going in my head was, well, no, we can't get tickets because all you guys come out of town.
All you guys are coming
and pay premium dollars.
I had the same experience, when we moved out from Louisville. Like originally, I studied at University of Kentucky, Lexington, and then moved out to Louisville. My first job at Humana. Then moved around a little bit, and we went to the West Coast to experience life. So we were out there for 3 years in Los Angeles. There was something called the Rose Parade out in Los Angeles, a huge thing, but it's more attended by people from the outside than the people out there. And the way how folks would do that is they would make money off of parking and renting their homes because people would like to live there during the Rose Parade. So it's very interesting how those things are very common, and it's outsiders flocking in, and the locals are basically treating that more as a time to make money, basically, economic advantage. So
well, sure. I mean, for those watching along, so Derby. I mean, everyone in the city loves Derby, and we all watch it on TV, but very few. Well, a lot of locals go to the infield, right? But very few, because so many tickets are sold to out-of-town folks. And for the longest time, the day before, you have the Kentucky Oaks, which is basically, so the Derby's open to male and female horses. The Oaks is for females only.
Female.
And so that became Louisville's day. Well, that became nationally very popular. So now you have what's called Thurby. Yep, which is the Thursday before Derby, and now that's basically the and sure enough, it was funny. I mean, Churchill Downs just kind of created that as a marketing ploy, and it's worked really well for them. I mean, it's a I know plenty of people who go.
I think it's an ideal marketing tactic, and they saw that there is a demand out there, and they feel like they can meet the supply, so they went for it, and it's fairly successful. And
again, for folks out from not from Louisville. Yeah, we do celebrate for 2 weeks for a 2-minute race, and the day before Derby is a holiday. Most businesses are closed.
Papa John's gave a day off. I remember. I think last year we had a half day off on Oaks and off on Derby. So I remember. Yeah, the day before. Yep.
Oh, awesome. So tell me, what does it mean to be an enterprise architect at Papa John's?
So, as an enterprise architect, you're balancing out a few things. You are working with business stakeholders. Since Papa John's is a fairly small organization compared to like a typical Fortune 100, you do have accessibility to your business leaders. So you could talk to your C-levels. You could talk to their direct reports and really get the essence of business, like what really is the business going after. So depending on that, you do get the opportunity then to step back a little bit and look at all your applications and, in the enterprise, like what are we doing from a supply chain standpoint? What are we doing from an e-commerce standpoint? What are we doing from a store standpoint? So you get to see the whole broad spectrum. And then you're able to connect dots between each other, saying, certain business units are asking for similar kind of capabilities. So then you start bringing that idea, that concept to life by, providing architecture or presentations, whether it's logical architecture, whether it's business architecture, to say, this is maybe the way how we can do things differently to make an impact. And then if that sells as an idea, like people are interested to do it. Obviously, it's dependent on how well you're doing from a sales perspective, that you have that money to spend, right? Then you can start bringing about the actual change, where now you're talking about specifics like road mapping. How would you change over a period of time? How would you derive the benefit? Then you work with a financial partner, which is somebody in the finance organization, to calculate the return on investment on that. And it's kind of a mini business proposal, I would say. We call it like a capital planning, but it's really a mini business proposal And then it's basically reviewed by the leadership, it's approved by the leadership, and then you go off implementing the project when now you're specifically talking about solution architectures, working with solution architects who are there, like the folks who are maybe expert at Salesforce or who are expert at the Genesis call center platform, whatever it is, like whatever you're trying to enable, and you start putting the pieces together, pieces of the puzzle together, and scoping out the actual project or projects along with actual investment that you have got. So that's really the fun part of an EA, to break the mold a little bit, to understand what's going on from a business standpoint, but then also keeping an eye on what's happening in the industry, in the space. So we keep a very close eye on the QSR space, and then we try to provide recommendations to leadership to say, our competitors are doing this, or we could be the first person in the market doing that. Do we want to go ahead and do that kind of stuff? Do we have the bandwidth? Do we have the capacity? So it's kind of that thought enablement as well. That is part of our role as well as an EA. And the third one is around just sound technology, like who should be our technology partners, right? Traditionally, like many of the organizations, Papa John's not being anything different, has built a lot of stuff by themselves for things that they consider to be proprietary in nature. However, the definition of proprietary is changing because you have partnerships now. So you have to look at it more from a perspective of integration and capabilities. So if I don't have that capability, my question is, do we really need to build it in-house, or can we start with a reliable partner and then decide for the longevity of the relationship where that capability should rest? Do we still leverage the partner, or now it's time to bring it in-house? Or like people say, can you go ahead and acquire that part of the functionality? Sure. So that's part of the role of an EA as well, if given the liberty and have the mindset. Are we operating at all levels today at Papa John's? Probably not. We are definitely better because we have been part of now the road mapping exercise at Papa John's. We know exactly what the business wants, so we have to be careful what we speak, in interviews and stuff. But nevertheless, it makes you feel that you can bring impact and you can work through the team. It's not a traditional role where you have a lot of direct reports. Yeah, you could have a few solution architects reporting to you, but it's more a role where you influence the other leaders in the other parts of the organization. Sure. To make the right decisions. So that's the fun part of it.
So I'm curious, obviously of projects you could speak of, what's been some of the more interesting projects you've worked on?
The interesting one that is front and center has been just the partnership, the whole business partnership with aggregators, right? So the whole value that aggregators bring to the table and the reinforcement around building a new commerce platform. So we have had a traditional commerce platform where it's a very closed system, only available for our channels, right? Like our app, our website, our call center, to challenging it now to be being made available to the aggregators of the world, to the other services in the world, like a third-party call center or whatever is needed in order to scale out. So that has been a very interesting project or a set of projects that we have been implementing ever since last year. And that has led to a lot of, other technical build-up around microservices architecture to support that scale out, requiring API gateway implementations to make it more scalable, more secure. Those aspects which turn out to be the more technical aspect of things once you have decided to go down the strategy, right? Because otherwise you're just happy what you're doing. And not really thinking about anything else, right? Because it's still making you money. So you'll be like, I maximize it. So I think that has been an interesting journey. The other one has been about actually making use of our first party data. We traditionally have always been little bit behind when it has come to analytics, but with the change in leadership and the thought process, being able to use cloud as one of those aspects, a quick way before even moving our transactional systems or any of the e-commerce stuff, we decided to invest in building out analytics in the cloud. So that had started before I joined Papa John's 2 years back, but just continuing that investment and being able to bring in other data assets and showing the insights to business partners and now making better business decisions has been very worthwhile for us as well. Just being able to put more metrics around stuff, being able to measure things has been fairly effective. Now people don't have to talk about investments in terms of their gut feeling, but more you can support it based on the data that you see. And Papa John's always had that data. It's just that it wasn't used in that fashion. So that has been a good journey for me at Papa John's, and being part of that journey and being able to help as an enterprise architect there.
I think that's been a big thing, especially the last 5 years and a little bit further, 5-10 years, that companies realizing they had so much data that they weren't really using. Right? They were just collecting it because it was there. And now that, I mean, number one, now that analytic tools have become much easier to use, cheaper to use, now we're able to get a whole lot more insights that we never could have even thought about getting 10 years ago.
Correct.
So it's
and quickly, right? So the cycle time is very low. It's very fast. The proof of concept is like rapid, like within a week. Maybe less than a week sometimes, right? If you know what you're doing. So it's really fast. You don't have the traditional sense of provisioning servers or any of that stuff. If you're already in the cloud, already working with a set of tools, you have quite a bit of flexibility there, which makes it challenging, but also makes it really fast to be able to provide insights and stuff. So that's really the interesting part.
Mm-hmm. So what do you find is your challenges that you have in your role?
I think the biggest challenge is breaking silos, right? So when the silo is very, very efficient, they do not see the value of breaking the silo. And it's true for any organization. It's not an example of Papa John's or Humana or Farmers Insurance or Children's Hospital Los Angeles. It's wherever I have gone, wherever I have worked. The challenge is if a silo is very effective, they are not going to be part of enterprise because it feels like that slows them down. So as an enterprise architect, you have to show that, no, there is more value to be part of enterprise. If not in the short term, in the midterm and the long term. So you have to come up with those constructs and come up with those efficiencies, come up with those evolving architectures that help you bring that point across. Only then you can be effective. Otherwise, so I feel that's the biggest challenge that I feel. Breaking an effective silo, like something that's really making money for the organization, normally they would not want to touch. But you do see that what they are doing is maybe incorrect. It can be maximized, or there's something what they are doing can be leveraged by another business unit that can make it effective, is really what you want to bring up and flush out, right? Mm-hmm. So
awesome. So I'm curious, I mean, how did you get your start in your career?
How did I start my career?
Yeah.
I came in as a graduate to United States of America in 2002. So I did some part-time work, co-op work back in India, Bombay, now known as Mumbai, and then I landed straight into Lexington, Kentucky. So started off my graduate school at University of Kentucky. Original plan was to do a master's, but I decided that I would want to spend a little more time in graduate school. So I moved on to a PhD. I have my doctorate out there in computer science, and I still like to teach courses at Bellarmine and at UFL. As part of that, being connected to the students and introducing them to concepts, and also learning from them and teaching them new technologies, right? From that standpoint. And then it was really, starting off as I was completing my PhD, going into software development from an industrial setup was Lexmark was my initial point. I joined them as an application developer, more on the build team. So you could treat them as a more of like a primitive DevOps team.
Right.
DevOps, it was not known as DevOps that time. We used to call them as the SCM, which is like configuration management team. And basically we build tools that automated things for our team members that actually build products for Lexmark, So that's where I started. And then I gradually moved into Humana, being a healthcare company, because I had my affinity towards data, because my PhD research was based on decision making in uncertainty. So you basically using a probabilistic model for decision making and stuff of that nature. So I wanted to kind of move into a company that was sitting on a lot of data, and that I would be able to use my talent there. And that's how I moved into data architecture, slowly moved into enterprise architecture, and then just kept moving forward from healthcare to insurance, which was like with Farmers, then went to provider, did a few startups along the way, got exposed to cloud as part of that, working with startups. That was a good place to start using cloud, because the enterprises were fearful of cloud, did not trust cloud. So it was a great way to actually get the cloud experience by actually going and working for startups, or being part of startups, or being part of mid-sized companies who really did not want to invest in having data centers and stuff of that sort, right? So I thought that was perfect timing from a career perspective. And then, coming back to Papa John's, where it is fairly fast and furious. I've never been part of a traditional e-com company. They've had e-com presence, but when you say digital sales is 70 to 80% of your
Sure.
income revenue, it matters a lot. So it definitely helps you to build stuff at that scale and supporting that kind of a volume, right? Compared to insurance and some of the other industries, right? So that's pretty much my journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you talk about the e-com piece of it. I order all my pizza online. Because why? I mean, number one, why wouldn't it? It's already got the profile. It's already got the pizza I want.
Yep.
And I always, was like, I actually order from Papa John's mostly, and always, sometimes they have the carry-out special, so I'll
Yes.
go pick it up, right? And I always find funny that because every time I'm in there, there's still people calling in.
Yes, there are.
Because I always sit there, I'm like, why would you want to call in? It's so much easier to do it online. But you always, there's always still people calling in. But
we do have customers still calling in. They like to talk. We have had some people who have worked at our stores for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So they feel that the quality of service that they get through a phone call is more than what they would, the option. So there are people, but it's definitely, it's a kind of a different set of our customer base who are still doing phone calls. We are working on things where we are trying to get that experience off of the store, more like above store, to a more call center based approach where we could still service the customer and make it more of a digital experience. Sure. As opposed to the traditional experience. So we are aggressively gone down that path, and we expect to have more and more stores onto that platform through the course of this year. So the phone channel is also going to be to digital for us in the coming years,
so now,
which is the right way to go.
I'm curious, with the call center thing, would that be also the franchises would be using the call center?
Yes. So it's interesting when we have talked to our franchisees, they saw that as an opportunity already.
Sure.
So we were kind of late to the game, and I was like, we need to go full in. But we are also looking at automation, right? So basically there are things like, why would you want somebody to answer a call on the status of your order. It should already be there in our system. So we should just be able to tell them what the status is, even if they called. So making it more of an omni-channel experience, regardless of where you did your transaction. So you started off on the website, but because you didn't have access to your phone because your kid was playing with your phone. So you ordered the pizza on the website. Now you got your phone. You just want to look at Papa Track and see what's going on with your order. Or you have an issue with your order. You want to know about the status of your order. So you decided to make a phone call. So, you should be able to just have that omni-channel experience without having to repeat yourself as a customer. Like, I don't want to pick up that call and say, hey, what's your name? What did you order? Which store did you order? No, you don't want to go down that path. So I think that's the I say the stakes that you have today to run a business, right? Make it as frictionless as possible. Know as much as you can about your customer. There's a fine line there that you don't intrude into their privacy, but just try to make the experience as easy as possible.
No, and it's good to hear that's what Papa John's working on. I mean, just yesterday or day before yesterday, I had to call my security alarm system company, and it was like, okay, what's your phone number? Like, you can't find what? You're not getting it off the and I did a lot of work for call centers, so I know for a fact they have my number because I know how those systems work. So stuff like that, right? And I mean, they actually, it was so bad. Because basically what happened was we were actually supposed to have someone come in to service one of their equipment, and it actually turned out that the guy had an accident, and that's why he wasn't able to make it in. But at this time I didn't know, right? All I knew is the guy didn't show up. So I'm calling him, and then they ask questions like, okay, when did you schedule this appointment? And I'm like, why are you asking me these questions, right? I mean, it's silly.
I know. Yes.
But I guess for some reason their system required them to put all the information in to look it up. I don't know. It was a little bit odd. But so I'm curious. Going back to your role as an enterprise architect, or just architect in general, right? One of the things I've seen over the years is that seems to be the role everyone aspires to be, right? I mean, all the way from the junior developer who's been developing for 3 months. Right? They're like, oh, I want to be an architect. What do I need to be an architect? So I'm curious because I definitely have some different. Number one, I admit a lot of times I tell them, "Are you sure you want to be an architect?" Right? Because it might not be what you want to do, but for those who want to be an architect, I mean, what do you think they need to do in their career to get to that type of role?
Yeah, so definitely the foundation for being a good architect, regardless whether you're a front-end architect or you're, a cloud architect or whatever it is, you still need to be a good fundamental engineer. If you're not a good engineer, you cannot recommend anything, because at the end of the day, whatever you recommend as an architecture, it needs to be built and it needs to be feasible. So a test of the feasibility of your architecture can only happen if you have the mindset of an engineer from that standpoint. So that is the minimal requirement. You still need to be a good, solid engineer, right? The other aspects around it is around being able to understand an ecosystem. So having there's this thing that is there, which is very common in a lot of disciplines. They always talk about systems and systems engineering. I think that's a very important course, regardless of any discipline, to kind of have that understanding, because you need to understand how systems talk to each other, the coupling aspect of it, the communication aspect of it, and all those other things, right? And also dependencies and things of that nature. So every discipline, like even when I was going through my MBA, which I felt like was very critical to understand the business aspects of running a business, so that you could formulate your engineering ideas, but show the business aspect of it for the buy-in as an architect. There was a systems design class, which talked about the same thing that we talk about designing systems, which is coupling, cohesion, and all those things. It was just not like talking in terms of code, but it was talking in terms of how do you treat systems. So I feel having a systemic view allows you to have the micro view as well as the macro view of the world. So you can do the micro view, which is basically your department. You have a little bit macro view, which is basically a couple of business units or your company. Then you basically come out to the industry. Then you basically come out to say, hey, now I want to get out of North America and look at international, right? So it's a very interesting thing, and it's the way how I look at it, like zoom in, zoom out all the time, which is very important as an EA. So you have the building blocks, but then you should be able to generalize very quickly, very rapidly, right? You need to be able to do decent amount of industry-based research, right? You have to be a researcher by trade. If you don't like reading, you don't like doing research, you cannot be a good enterprise architect because you don't know what's going on out there. You're probably saying you're a good enterprise architect, but you're pretty much getting outdated by not being on terms, right? And you need to lead from the front. If you are not a leader by design, if you're just a follower, it might be difficult for you. It's good to be a follower initially because you need mentors to guide you and stuff of that sort. But eventually, to be a good EA, you have to be a leader from the front. And not to say that you're not taking other people's opinions and you're not taking, other people's feedback into consideration. That's a very important aspect of a leader as well. But you need to take your idea to the table. There's nobody else who's going to take that idea to the table. So you need to be fairly confident. So I think these are some of the building blocks for an EA. You need to be an engineer by trade. You need to be able to have a reasonable understanding of systemic design. You need to be an avid researcher, to be in touch with the trends that are going on. And you need to be a leader by trade. So it's difficult. It's not easy, and you're not going to be good at everything. It's like I call the SWOT analysis of you as an individual: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. But that's where you try to build a team, because EA is not an individual thing. EA is more like a practice. So if you can build that practice within your organization by some of your team members, which are part of enterprise architecture, but also push that practice out as much as you can to the engineering teams, to the delivery teams, that makes it more effective. So to be able to do that is something that you can do, and you can sustain and thrive in the long run, because you can't do everything by yourself. Right. You just can't. So.
Oh, cool. No, I appreciate that. Like I said, it's something that everyone seems to want to aspire to, and I know usually
some organizations are confused. What value does an EA bring to the organization? Like, is it a bunch of bureaucratic processes? Is architecture review board a rubber stamp for a solution? Right? It doesn't really matter. So there have been these things, but if you really want to be effective, and you really need this view and the ability to partner and show your value to the organization. So. So very valid.
Cool. Well, let's look at the talk you're going to be doing at Code PaLOUsa, where you're talking about the role of enterprise architecture in building evolutionary architectures. I mean,
yep.
What's the key takeaway from that talk?
So the key takeaway is, traditionally everybody has thought that you have to think about architecture as already sought out thing, and it cannot change. It cannot change until the project is completed, which is typically how you would have thought about requirements for your project, right? From a software development practice perspective. So that is the part where it has created a lot of angst amongst architects, that's saying that, hey, I don't have a fully defined architecture, right? And the way I look at that is it is an opportunity to build an evolutionary architecture. So you start off with building an architecture that is reasonably sound based on the requirements today. And then you kind of have a way to evolve that architecture over a period of time, because that's how you would be successful. You would not be able to build out the whole architecture on day one. And that's the key takeaway. And this talking about how you could do that in an organization. It's not a foreign concept. You still have all the typical requirements that you have, which is like related to security, performance, auditing capabilities, anything related to legal. So you have the standard things that you're looking at, which you're looking at it today, but you just have to be able to build architecture that's, that can evolve over a period of time. You cannot put all your eggs in one basket. If you decide to, bring in an, how do I say, off the shelf product like an ERP or something, don't limit yourself to what that tool is able to give you, because that tool does not represent your entire business function. And understand how you would build architecture around it that can evolve over a period of time to meet your business needs. So those are some of the key takeaways. There's another one which I'm interested in talking about is, it's called fitness functions. It's a mathematical term that, we do, like, the curve fitting and the line fitting for your set of data points, right? So similarly, you have fitness functions for the capabilities, I call it the ilities, of your architecture. So you basically define fitness functions for them. And then when you're recommending a change to the architecture, you're actually checking the fitness function output for that change. If it's within that range, then you have done the right thing for your architecture. For example, you started off with a service which was built in an ESB service architecture, service-oriented architecture, which was giving a response time of 100 milliseconds. If that is your fitness function for performance, whenever you change it to a microservice architecture, guess what? It should be at least 100 milliseconds, or at most 100 milliseconds, or response time. So kind of, that's kind of the example, like the real world example that I would talk about. So that's the idea, not to worry too much about having a fixated architecture, being able to walk away from your architecture from time to time, because it's evolving, and to define these fitness functions, because when you do them, then you're really able to measure what the architecture was before and what the architecture is now, and whether your recommendation is actually good overall or not, essentially. So.
Cool. And then, so is Papa John's an agile organization?
Yes.
So again, I mean, definitely where you have to adapt to change.
Adapt. Yes. To adapt. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I'm curious.
So,
I mean, are you all? I'm assuming that means you're doing sprints and such.
Yes.
So,
we do.
So I'm curious. How long are your sprints normally?
So most of the teams, since I work with a bunch of teams, they are going on 2-week sprints.
2-week sprints.
Some of the teams, like for example, like our mobile apps teams and stuff, we do monthly releases. So although they are on a 2-week sprint, they are delivering final product into the hands of the customer on a monthly basis. That's how typically our web release is also going at this point. A lot of our other stuff, which is internal, or even if our point of sale stuff, we are basically on bi-weekly sprints. So we are able to do any kind of incremental fixes, any incremental functionality rollout in increments of 2 weeks, which has helped business because they are able to see some functionality up and running in a store. We use feature flagging and those, typical things that are important where we don't turn the functionality on for all stores. We kind of are able to do the alpha, beta releases. So that's kind of the mindset, what we do. By the time it's mainstream, it's roughly around, I would say, a month and a half when we have kind of tested the feature good enough where now we say, hey, we can open it up for the entire enterprise, which has worked fairly successful for us. That has basically challenged us to go away from manual testing, adopt more automated testing, build that skill set, use those tools. It has also pushed us to reduce our build times, where we have started to leverage CI/CD, DevOps practices. So in general, everything has to come together in order to achieve that final goal for deploying a good quality piece of software into production, right, into the hands of the customer. So it has required a lot of these disciplines to come in and work together as a team. Also, the ability to get stuff done in the cloud faster is also helped us to go a little more faster there, because initially, it would take a little more longer although our infrastructure team is good, but still provisioning and acquiring hardware and all is not easy. It takes quite some time. So preaching to the choir here, so that has in general just helped us to be a little more nimble, a little more faster, be able to change things quickly, test things quickly, right? Then other concepts like the A/B testing tools and those kinds of things. So in general, that has helped us to just evolve faster and make changes faster.
Mm-hmm. So that we talk a little bit more about John's. I'm assuming that you all started working from home with the pandemic.
Yes, ever since March. Ever since March, we've been working from home. It was a major concern in terms of productivity and how the team would be able to get together and work it out. But it has been fairly good. We have, in fact, increased our projects and stuff that we have been working on. But we have been able to adapt quickly. Mm-hmm. And we've also been able to get a lot of our finance teams and HR teams also to be able to work remotely, not just the technology team, because we were kind of working remotely 1 or 2 days of the week.
Okay.
So it was kind of going on because some people were traveling a little bit away from office, like coming in from Lexington. You have a 70 miles ride, right, one way. So if 1 or 2 days you're working from home, that kind of helps you out a little bit. So we were doing that, but it was more for the other teams to adapt and adopt and kind of do that stuff. And especially new employee onboarding and those kinds of things. So it's been good. We have been leveraging some of the other collaboration tools like Teams and Lucid Chart for a lot of our whiteboarding sessions and architecture collaboration. So like resorting to more online collaboration tools has kind of been our key to success.
So what do you think Papa John's going to do once this kind of starts clearing up? You think they're going to be more willing to do more remote work? Or do you think they're going to go back to more, doing it back to the mix? Or
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. I think people do want to come and collaborate in person in the office, although it's kind of not an absolute requirement. It's more of a preference. Sure. Where they get to meet people and stuff. So I think there's going to be some flexibility. We have been pretty vocal about hiring talent across the nation, right? Especially when it comes to architecture. I have worked with my leadership and convinced my leadership, and they're fairly supportive. I was having a hard time last year to fill some architecture positions, whereas this year it has been a blast. I already been able to hire them, wrap them up, and they're already delivering, right? So it's been so just the flexibility of being able to hire talent across the nation has been wonderful. So I'm hoping that to continue and not create these artificial restrictions that we need to hire somebody local from Louisville and needs to come into the office and all those barriers that are not really needed for the line of work we are in, right? So I think it's going to be department by department basis. I think from an IT perspective, it's really going to be maybe specific meetings with business partners and stuff would require you to come in person or something like that. But I feel like we would be able to work remotely for as long as we can, as long as we are productive, right? And I don't think there are any major concerns at this point of time.
No, I like it. I mean, so I work for a company that's 100% remote. We don't even have an office. I mean, there's no office at all. But you talked about the preference part. I mean, so we have no offices and such, but we were. It is interesting. While we do not have any physical barriers, it happens to be everyone in tech all lives in this area, right? I mean, the farthest one is from London, Kentucky, which is an hour and 45 minutes away, right? So it's not that far. And so we were like having a once a month in person, we were renting out space, that we could use. And people I'm noticing people are missing being able to do that. Plus, we can't do
Yeah,
we can't do it the same way, right? It's
yeah, the interaction. Yeah, and I think, the organization has been very, very clear about people's safety. So they don't want to put people in a spot of bother or make them feel
oh yeah,
uncomfortable. They also understand the situation with the schools and with the kids and those kinds of things. So that's another, key decision-making factor for many of our employees as well, just like any other company. So I think the leaders are keeping their they're keeping their options open and gradually making the decision around the prolonging of being able to work remotely or only coming into the office when required and following a certain level of protocol if you need to come into the office for any reason, right? Because we cannot compromise our people's safety, team member safety, right, at the stores and stuff. That is of the utmost importance at this point of time.
So, what do you like to do for fun?
For fun, I like to interact with kids a lot, right?
Okay.
So I play with my two boys, Ayan and Kabir, 8 and 4 years of age. We do a lot of biking together. We do a lot of soccer together. So those are two of our fun things, and we play a lot of video games together. So that's kind of my fun activity with them. Outside of the family aspect with playing with my boys, I'm part of the Home of Innocence technology committee as well as associate board. So I like to do fundraising events, talk about the Home of Innocence at every opportunity that I get, like I'm doing right now, and just talk about what that organization is doing for the betterment, of the kids and the community in general, and just trying to garner as much as support as we can. It has
Sure
been
enough,
fun
for those outside of this community, I mean, talk about what the purpose of that organization is.
So the Home of Innocence basically provides a bunch of different services. They take care of kids who have had who don't have anybody to take care of them. So it's not just an orphanage, but kids who have had a disturbing childhood, or kids who have parents with alcohol problems, right, or just are not treating them well. So they're basically taken away from their natural environment, which is home, and you basically give them a different environment where they can just grow and they can learn and they can start trusting people, because some of these kids have been abused, they have not been taken care of properly. So it's kind of giving them that love, care, affection. The other one is related to hospice. It's more around related to critical care for kids who cannot be treated in hospitals and stuff of that sort. So it's a combination of these kinds of services. They also help the parents who have the ability, like, say for example, I had an alcohol problem, but then I've actually been able to go through the programs, and now I'm pretty much able to control my alcohol issue. I'm able to work with the state, and the Home of Innocence helps you there to work with the state to be able to get my kids back, because now I'm able to get my job and I'm able to be independent. So it kind of helps in that perspective too. And then they also do foster care. So it's quite a few things that they do. It's a very nice organization. It's predominantly operated out from here from Louisville, but it basically covers the Indiana area as well. It's been great to be part of them. The way how I got associated with them was I ran the Bourbon Chase, which Papa John's normally does. And unfortunately, this year we may not have the Bourbon Chase, but I ran 2 years back, and we typically pick a nonprofit for whom we basically provide the funds that we have gathered, and it turned out to be the Home of Innocence. I liked what they did when I had a tour of their facility. Obviously, you don't get to see their kids because of privacy reasons. But then, then you just, I just felt like, this is something that I would like to do. And it has been good to be part of their technology committee as well, because we have been able to fortunately shape them in a better way, that they were ready for COVID, actually, because they were a very traditional organization. Just the small things like not using VDIs, getting the laptops for their people, because not overloading the Citrix server, getting the wireless access points up and running, security stuff, using Teams and stuff of that. It's just helped them organically to deal with the COVID situation, right? Because otherwise the organization was not going to be ready. So it has been nice to be able to contribute something that you're passionate about in a different way, in a personal way, outside of the company, right? So it's fun.
Oh, well, kudos to helping out with that. It's awesome to see people who were giving back to the community, with their technical skills, right? Taking what you do at your job and what you love doing and being able to help others out. Also, kudos for doing the Bourbon Chase. I actually have 3 years I drove for one of the teams.
Oh, I have a lot of respect for the drivers too. So it's not just the runners; it's the whole team.
Okay.
The drivers, they don't get too much sleep. They have to be right there to the next spot to pick the next driver. It takes a lot of coffee and a lot of other stuff to be awake for that whole exercise. But it's fun team effort though. I like the adrenaline rush. I didn't know if I was going to survive it because I'm not a marathon runner. I just practiced running, but I feel it's a great experience. Everybody should do it.
Yeah, and for those who know, so the Bourbon Chase, was 500 miles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 250 miles, I think.
Okay, yeah. But it's a relay race, continuous, right? And and see the drive, because it's just shy of 24 hours. It is a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it. Always have fun supporting the team with that, and because I ran for a long time, but I can't really run much anymore. My knees are just fully torn apart at this point.
Yeah, I had a couple of team members leave the team for the same reasons, injury reasons, But it's a great experience. I think I was running my second leg, and it was pretty uphill, steep. And I was struggling, but there was a lot of encouragement along the way. It's not really a competition; it's actually a tradition.
Right.
So definitely, I would encourage people, to have that experience if they want to have that experience. You run through sunshine, you run through dark, you run through rain, you run through whatever it is on that day. So.
Yep. And again, for those, so it's basically part of the reason for the name is you're going from distillery to distillery. Right, all the different bourbon distilleries.
Yeah, and it ends up, you end up completing the race in Lexington downtown. Yeah, but you go from distillery to distillery, and I think on my first race when I ran, I had the luxury to see the sunrise while I was running, and it was beautiful.
That is pretty cool. Awesome. It's been awesome talking to you. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you joining me today. Really appreciate that you'll be speaking with at Code PaLOUsa in 2 weeks. This should be, I think this will be a good topic. Whether you're a senior developer or you're still kind of new and trying to figure out what all the different roles are doing. Right. So I think this talk will be good for a lot of different levels of people.
Yep. Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you so much, Chad, for the opportunity. Looking forward to the Code PaLOUsa event. Super excited.
Great. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.